Yang Guang, later enshrined in infamy as Emperor Yang of Sui, drew his first breath in the turbulent autumn of 569 CE amid the fractured courts of the northern Zhou dynasty, a realm where Buddhist stupas pierced the northern skies and Confucian scholars whispered of heaven's mandate amid the clamor of warring states that had splintered China since the Han's golden collapse 3 centuries prior. Born in the opulent yet precarious household of Yang Jian, a formidable general whose lance had carved paths through the Göktürk khaganates and whose cunning had elevated him from a mere duke to the regent's shadow, Yang Guang was the second son, his elder brother Yang Yong already groomed as the heir apparent in a family where martial prowess intertwined with the silk threads of imperial ambition. His mother, the indomitable Dugu Qianluo, daughter of the legendary general Dugu Xian, whose cavalry had shattered the Ruan hordes and whose bloodline blended Xianbei nomad vigor with Han refinement, nurtured him with a ferocity that brooked no weakness, instilling in the boy a precocious intellect sharpened by tutors versed in the classics and a physical regimen that honed his frame for the saddle and the sword. From cradle tales preserved in the annals of later historians like Sima Guang, Guang was said to possess an otherworldly beauty even in infancy, his features chiseled like jade under moonlight, a portent that would later fuel both adoration and envy among the palace eunuchs who cooed over his cradle. Yet his early years unfolded not in isolated splendor but in the shadow of dynastic flux. The northern Zhou, a Xianbei Han hybrid forged by Yuan Tai's iron will, teetered under Emperor Wu's pious excesses, his edicts blending Taoist elixirs with brutal purges that claimed thousands in the name of cosmic harmony. Guang's grandfather, Yang Cheng, a mid-level official whose modest estates in Huayin provided the family's northern anchor, passed modest comforts to his progeny, but it was Yang Jian's meteoric rise, crushing the Qin dynasty's southern pretensions and outmaneuvering the Zhou's fragile court, that catapulted the boy into princely robes by age 12, when in 581, his father seized the dragon throne from the child Emperor Jing, birthing the Sui Dynasty in a coup veiled as celestial decree. At that pivotal dawn, Guang, then 12, was elevated to the title of Prince of Jin, a frontier fief encompassing the rugged Taihang Mountains where coal veins whispered of untapped wealth, a strategic perch that tested his mettle early, for the Yellow River's floods and nomadic raids demanded a prince's vigilance even as he memorized the Analects by lantern light in his father's temporary capital at Chang'an, a city of terracotta warriors and echoing drum towers where the Wei River's mists cloaked the ghosts of the fallen Qin. The Sui's founding in 581 marked not just a dynasty's birth but a son's apprenticeship in the arts of empire, as Yang Jian, now Emperor Wen, dispatched the young prince of Jin to Bing province in 582, a windswept command north of the Yellow River where Xiongnu remnants and Göktürk scouts probed the borders like wolves at a fold. At 13, Guang shouldered the weight of 10,000 spearmen and a bureaucracy riddled with northern aristocrats loyal to the old Zhou, his days a blur of dawn patrols along the Great Wall's crumbling crenels and evenings poring over maps with aides like the shrewd Wang Xiao, whose counsel would later prove a double-edged sword in fraternal intrigues. Historical fragments from the Sui Shu, compiled by later Tang scholars, paint a vivid portrait of the prince's early valor. In 584, when the Göktürk Khagan Shabalu, Ashina Shetu, the wise and skilled, offered spurious submission laced with espionage, Guang advocated a preemptive strike, his memorials to his father laced with tactical brilliance that echoed Sun Tzu's feints, though Wen's caution prevailed, opting for diplomacy that bought fragile peace. Undeterred, Guang orchestrated a punitive raid in 585 against the renegade Dadu Khan Ashina Dianjue, whose horsemen had ravaged the Ordo's loop, leading a vanguard of 5,000 cataphracts clad in lamellar silk. He ambushed the Khan's encampment at dawn near the Gobi's fringe, sabers flashing in the dust as Göktürk banners toppled, capturing herds of 10,000 steppe ponies whose hides would line imperial saddles for a generation. This triumph, etched in bronze edicts dispatched to the capital, elevated Guang's star, but it was his nuptials that year, wedding Xiao, a lithe beauty from the fallen Liang dynasty's royal blood, daughter of Emperor Ming's line, whose porcelain grace masked a steely resolve that sealed his domestic front, their union a political calculus blending northern might with southern legitimacy, for Zhao's kin commanded the Yangtze's rice bowl, their estates a bulwark against Chen holdouts. In the intimacy of their Shochuan pavilion, overlooking the Huai River's serpentine bends, Guang and Xiao forged a partnership of equals. Chronicles whisper of her counsel tempering his fire, her embroidery needles tracing maps as they plotted alliances, and their bedchamber echoing with laughter over shared verses from the Shijing. A harmony that starkly contrasted the Crown Prince Yong's reputed indulgences in Chang'an's pleasure quarters, where concubine silks whispered temptations his father decried as unfilial excess. By 588, as the Sui's gaze turned southward to extinguish the Jian Dynasty, the last splinter of the southern dynasties, a decadent realm of lotus pavilions and intrigue-laden canals, Guang, now 19 and burnished by frontier scars, was entrusted with the eastern prong of the invasion, a host of 500,000 souls under his nominal command, though generals like the grizzled He Ruobi and the cunning Gao Jiong directed the van. Winter quarters in Pengcheng buzzed with forges hammering catapults and smiths tempering dragon-sprouted halberds, Guang's tent a nexus of strategy where he pored over spy dispatches from Jiankang, the Qin capital where Emperor Shen's eunuchs drowned in wine while border forts crumbled. The campaign erupted in the new year of 589, Guang's flotilla, thousands of junks lashed with iron chains, sailing the Huai under cover of fog, his banners of crimson silk snapping like wounds in the mist as they breached the Yangtze's defenses at Yangzhou, where Qin sentries' gongs fell silent under poisoned arrows. By spring, Jiankang's walls yielded after a siege of thunderous rams and flame arrows that lit the night like false dawns. Emperor Shubao, the debauched lord, captured in his seraglio amid silken disarray, his 5,000 palace beauties parceled as war prizes, though Guang, in a gesture of clemency that earned his father's nod, spared the Qin imperial clan from the executioner's axe, relocating them to Chang'an's gilded cages with stipends that bought their silence and southern elites' loyalty. This mercy, lauded in edicts as the sage prince's benevolence, masked a calculated stroke. Guang wedded his sisters to Qin nobles, weaving a tapestry of matrimony that quelled Yangtze rebellions, his own consort Xiao, whose Liang blood eased the transition, hosting banquets where former foes pledged fealty over phoenix-tail goblets, her diplomacy a silken thread binding north and south. Yet beneath the triumph's laurels lurked fraternal fissures. Yong, ensconced in the capital, chafed at his brother's glory, his spies murmuring of Guang's excessive leniency to southern barbarians, a slur that festered as Wen's health waned, the emperor's migraines confining him to Renshou Palace's shadowed halls where Dugu's whispers held sway. The year 590 brought reassignment sting. 1. Wary of Yong's indolence but trusting Guang's vigor, swapped the brothers' fiefs, dispatching the prince to Yang province, a Yangtze backwater of rice paddies and malaria mists, while Yong inherited Jin's northern bulwarks, a move that tested Guang's resilience amid the humid haze where mosquitoes feasted on legionaries' flesh. There, in the sweltering courts of Jiangdu, Guang quelled a Liang remnant uprising led by the warlord Xiao Mo, his catapults reducing hill forts to rubble while spies sowed discord among the rebels' ranks, capturing Mo in a midnight raid where silk nooses silenced his war cries. This victory, coupled with flood control dikes that tamed the Yangtze's seasonal rage, earning him the sobriquet River Prince among the peasantry, further burnished his image as the dutiful son, contrasting Yong's rumored dissipations in Bing's wine-soaked garrisons. By 594, as Wen's piety deepened into megalomania, Guang urged the imperial sacrifice at Mount Tai, a rite of cosmic renewal last performed by the Hans Wu, tempering his father's grand vision with a scaled-down procession of 1,000 chariots and 10,000 infantry, their banners of azure silk trailing incense smoke across Shandong's peaks, a spectacle that reaffirmed Sui's heavenly mandate amid Göktürk envoys' watchful eyes. Yet palace shadows lengthened. Dugu's death in 602, from a rumored surfeit of jealousy over Wen's fleeting glance at a palace maid, left Guang unchecked, his agents, eunuchs like the silver-tongued Zhonghang, fabricating tales of Yong's treasonous plots, scrolls, discovered, in the crown prince's chambers detailing alliances with Western Turks, whispers of sorcery involving fox spirits that chilled the emperor's dreams. In a midnight council at Renshou, 1, his frame racked by age's cruelties, deposed Yong on December 13, 600, the fallen heir's wails echoing as guards dragged him to a Chang'an dungeon, Guang's ascension to crown prince sealed with edicts that praised his filial purity, while damning Yong's depraved heart. Guang's mercy was a myth. Yong's pleas for audience fell on deaf ears, the brothers' final gaze a chasm of betrayal as the dungeon's iron clanged shut, a prelude to the prince's coerced suicide in 604, his veins opened in a tub of warmed wine to spare the executioner's blade. The Dragon Throne claimed Yangguang on August 21, 604, in a ceremony of crimson drums and phoenix calls that masked the blood on the palace floors, for traditional chroniclers like those of the Ziji Tongjian, drawing from Sui court diarists, suspect fratricide stain, whispering that Guang, with Yang Su's poisoned figs and Zhang Heng's strangler's noose, hastened Wen's end during a fevered visit to the ailing emperor. The old man's gasps silenced by a silken pillow as summer cicadas droned beyond the latticed screens. At 35, the new sovereign, proclaimed Yangguang, Emperor Yang, donned the 12-beaded crown in Luoyang's newly minted halls, a city of lush cliffs and Wei River bends that he favored for its central perch, equidistant from northern steppes and southern seas, though Chang'an's ancient grandeur chafed his modern visions. His empress, Xiao, ascended beside him, her liang silks a bridge to the reconquered south, but Guang's bedchamber soon swelled with consorts like the demure Chen and the fiery Kai, daughters of frontier lords whose favors bought loyalty in the Yangtze's misty marches, a departure from Dugu's monogamous zeal that fueled later slanders of his leonine appetites. Early edicts pulsed with reformist fire. In 605, he abolished the 9-rank system of aristocratic appointments, inaugurating the keju, imperial examinations based on Confucian merit, that sifted scholars from plowshares, flooding the bureaucracy with 7,000 Jinshe graduates whose ink brushes outquilled the old clan's birthrights. A seismic shift that birthed the Tang's golden age of literati but sowed resentment among the Wei's faded nobles who saw their sons' sinecures evaporate like morning dew. That spring, as cherry blossoms carpeted Luoyang's avenues, Guang decreed the Yongji Canal's birth, a 1,500-li waterway linking the Yellow River's silted fury to the Huai's gentle flow, its dredgers and corvée levies numbering 1 million souls, men and women yoked in harnesses that chafed skin raw under overseers' whips. The project's completion in 5 months, a marvel of coerced genius that halved grain transport costs but claimed 100,000 lives in fevers and floggings, their unmarked graves a silent toll on the empire's ledgers. Emperor Yang's vision unfurled in tapestries of ambition. By autumn 605, he commissioned 40 secondary palaces, splendored pavilions of vermilion beams and jade inlays, from Yangzhou's lotus lakes to Taiyuan's coal-veined hills, each a node in a network of imperial eyes, their construction crews hauling granite from Sichuan's quarries over roads slick with monsoon mud, eunuchs tallying the dead in bamboo tallies that vanished into the archives. His fleet graced the Bian River that fall, a flotilla of dragon boats whose prows carved waves like gilded serpents, Guang reclining on phoenix thrones amid orchestras of pipa and sheng, the air thick with frankincense as southern satraps proffered pearls and ivory in obeisance. Yet 606 brought shadow. Crown Prince Zhao, his firstborn by Xiao, a boy of luminous promise schooled in the odes and archery, succumbed to a sudden flux at 12, his fevered brow cooled by palace fans as physicians brewed elixirs of cinnabar and ginseng in vain, Guang's grief a public dirge that echoed in edicts postponing audiences, though whispers accused sorcery from Yang's vengeful shade, the emperor's paranoia flaring in purges that claimed Zhao's wet nurses and tutors. Unwilling to name a successor amid the void, his second son Jian, a willful youth of 10, deemed too tender, Guang governed through a web of favorites, elevating Yuan Shu, the son of his patricide enabler, to Grand Commandant, whose nepotism flooded the court with Shu clan's kin, their silks a stain on merit's scroll. In 607, as northern tours unveiled the empire's veins, Guang decreed a grand highway from Luoyang to Taiyuan, 3,000 li of crushed gravel and milestone markers, its corvée peasants lashed into labor under summer suns, the road's completion a ribbon of empire that ferried tribute but buried thousands in roadside barrows, their songs of toil haunting the emperor's dreams. Rewards flowed to the Ashina Rungun, the western Göktürk's khagan whose submission brought 100,000 horses to Sui pastures, but critics like the blunt Gao Jiong, whose memorials decried the tours as frivolous excess, met the axe, Jiong's head rolling from a scaffold in Chang'an's marketplace, a crimson warning to the remonstrants whose ink had once flowed freely under one. The year 608 dawned with hydraulic hubris. Guang's edict conscripted 1.2 million for the Yongji Canal's extension, linking it to the Bian and ultimately birthing the Grand Canal, a 2,700 li leviathan from Hangzhou's tides to Zhua's northern plains. Its locks and weirs a symphony of sluices that would feed Beijing's garrisons for centuries, but its dredging claimed 500,000 in exhaustion and drownings. Widows' wails rising from the Yangtze's banks like a dirge for the dynasty. Women, too, bore the yoke, 1,000 selected for palace service but many perishing in the canal's mud, their corpses fodder for carp that schooled in the emperor's private lakes. Diplomatic barbs stung that year, a missive from Japan's Prince Shotoku Taisho, penned in flawless classical Chinese, extolled Buddhism's dharma yet subtly chided Sui's barbarian heirs, Guang's fury birthing an edict of insult that severed envoys, the prince's words, "The sun rises in the east," a mirror to Sui's waning light. Paranoia gnawed deeper, accusations of witchcraft ensnared Jian's circle, eunuchs whispering of fox spirits haunting the heir's chambers, leading to executions that left the boy isolated, his tutors beheaded in courtyard spectacles where blood pooled like spilled ink. In 609, land reforms redistributed fallow acres to 100,000 peasant households, a Confucian nod to Mencius's wells that swelled granaries but alienated landlord clans whose manners shrank, their resentment a slow poison in the bureaucracy's veins. Northern tours resumed, Guang's progress a caravan of 100,000, chariots inlaid with lapis, elephants caparisoned in scarlet, trampling the Gobi's fringe where Tuyuhun Khans knelt with tribute of white camels, yet the emperor's gaze turned covetous to Goguryeo, the Korean redoubt whose pine-clad peaks mocked Sui's eagles. The Goguryeo campaigns of 612 ignited the pyre. Guang, at 43, mobilized a million-strong host from Yozhou's barracks, the largest since the Warring States, crossing the Liao River in spring's thaw, his banners of 9 dragons snapping over 1,000 junks that choked the Yalu's mouth, generals like the veteran Lai Hu were commanding the van while the emperor watched from a hillock pavilion, his throne borne on palanquins of Polonia wood. Initial clashes favored Sui, forts at Lelong fell in grape-shot storms, Goguryeo's king Yongyu suing for terms with 30,000 severed heads as surety, but autumn's monsoons turned the plains to quagmires, supply lines snapping under Korean partisans' arrows, 300,000 conscripts perishing in fevered camps where rice moldered and dysentery flowed like the Han. Retreat's horns blew in winter's bite, Guang's fury lashing at couriers who bore defeat's tidings, Lai Huer's demotion a scapegoat's fate. Undaunted, 613 saw a second thrust, 500,000 under Yuan Shu, bogged in Anshiching's siege, catapults hurling 200 gene boulders that cracked granite but not resolve, Korean sorties felling 50,000 in a single dawn, the emperor's edicts from Luoyang raging at cowardly hearts, while peasants in Hunan rose in pitchfork mutinies, their granaries bare from canal levees. By 614, the third expedition crumbled under blizzards that entombed legions in Yalu's drifts, 90% of the host lost to frost and famine, survivors straggling back with tales that chilled the court, where whispers of mad dragon supplanted sage sovereign. Rebellions erupted like summer storms. In 613, Yang Xiangan, the nephew of patricide architect Yang Sui, unfurled the standard of revolt in Liang, his 100,000 rebels torching tax rolls and proclaiming Wen's ghost as true emperor. Guang's counter, forces under the eunuch Zhang Xutua shattering the uprising in a melee of halberds and fire arrows. Xuangan's flight ending in a fisherman's noose on the Yangtze's banks. Yet the fissures widened. In Hunan, Yang Hucheng's peasants crowned a false one, their barricades of thorn and bamboo repelling imperial horse until starvation claimed them, while western fringes saw Liang Pai's bandits swelling to 200,000, their raids a hemorrhage on Sui's vitals. As 615's dust settled over Korea's pyres, Guang fled to Yangzhou's lotus-choked canals, his progress a fugitive's caravan of 10,000 guards amid whispers of regicide, the capital Luoyang a hollow shell where officials like Su Wei, his old mentor, met the sword for remiss counsel. Palaces multiplied, the Jiangdu retreat a sprawl of 300 halls where Guang drowned despair in wine and verse, his poems of fallen petals and dragon's lament recited to consorts whose dances masked the empire's unraveling. Young Jian, the disinherited prince, plotted in shadows, his clique of astrologers divining Sui's fall, but Guang's spies struck first, Jian's execution in 615, on fabricated charges of incest with ants, his young frame broken on the wheel in a Yangzhou square, a spectacle that silenced the court but echoed in the soldiery's mutters. Revolts tide-crested in 616, Shui Ju's western horde crowned him emperor in Jincheng, his cavalry thundering to the Wei's gates, while Dou Jianda's brigands seized Hebei's granaries, their banners of "Avenge the People," drawing 300,000 to the cause. Guang's countermeasures faltered, conscription stripped fields bare, taxes tripled to fund phantom legions, the Grand Canal, now a vein of rebellion, ferrying not grain but whispers of doom from Hangzhou's silk weavers to Taiyuan's coal miners. In 617, Li Yuan, garrison commander at Taiyuan, a scion of the Longxi Li clan whose blood mingled Han and Xiongnu, unfurled rebellion's banner, his son Shimon, the future Taizong, leading sorties that toppled western warlords, Yuan's march on Chang'an a juggernaut that claimed the western capital by summer's end. Luoyang held a phantom court under the eunuch Huan, its walls ringed by peasant levies whose scythes dripped with the blood of tax collectors, while Yangzhou's isolation deepened, Guang's fleets patrolling the Yangtze in vain against pirate junks laden with deserters. The end came in the humid haze of April 618, as cherry petals choked the imperial moat. Yuan Huaji, the grand commandant whose clan had risen on patricide's ladder, turned coat amid the guards' growls, his blade, whetted on palace grudges, finding Guang's throat in a dawn coup within Jiangdu's seraglio. The emperor's gasp a final verse in his anthology of regrets. His consort Xiao fleeing with infant Yangzhengde to the Göktürk steppes where khagans yurts offered exiles chill embrace. Huaji proclaimed himself emperor in a farce of edicts, but retributions will turn swift. Li Yuan's forces, now styling the Tang, crushed him at the Wei's ford, Huaji's flight ending in a fisherman's gibbet, his head dispatched to the boy Emperor Gong as Sui's last gasp. Yang's corpse, stripped and shrouded in haste, mouldered in an unmarked grave by the canal's bank, weeds claiming the dragon's dust until Tang mercy exhumed him a decade later, Li Shimin ordering a sovereign's tomb near his father's in Shangxi, a belated nod to the visionary whose canals still watered the realm. His legacy fractured like jade, reviled in Tang annals as the wanton tyrant whose follies birthed chaos, yet hailed in modern scrolls for the keju's merit flame and the Grand Canal's eternal vein, a 1,700-year lifeline that ferried Ming fleets and Qing barges. His poems, melancholy odes to fleeting blooms, anthologized in the Quan Tangshur as echoes of a mind that dreamed too vast for mortal sinew. Zhao's wanderings wove tragedy's thread. Captured by Turks, she wed a Khagan's son before Tang envoys ransomed her in 620, her return to Chang'an a widow's vigil where she spun tales of Sui's splendor to granddaughters who would birth Tang princesses, her lifespan, over 90 years, a bridge from Chen's fall to Tang's zenith. Yang's daughters fared variably. One, Yang Wanchun, wed a Korean lord in defiant exile, her line fading in Goguryeu's mists, while another graced Li Shimin's harem, her silks a subtle conquest in the victor's bed. The mistakes that led to Emperor Yang of Sui's downfall were a vortex of unbridled ambition, tyrannical caprice, and a profound disconnect from the people's pulse that transformed a visionary's throne into rebellion's pyre, extinguishing the Sui in a blaze of its own forging. Chief among them loomed his fraternal purges, the orchestrated deposition and demise of Yang Yong in 600, fueled by fabricated treason scrolls and maternal manipulations, that not only stained his ascension with fratricide's blood but alienated the northern aristocracy whose loyalties might have buttressed his Göktürk fronts, their resentment a slow venom that poisoned court council and swelled rebel ranks in Hebei's heartlands. Compounding this, his grandiose hydraulics, the Grand Canal's million-man corvée from 605 onward, dredging 2,700 li of waterway at the cost of 500,000 lives in mud and miasma, while an infrastructural colossus for posterity, ravaged the peasantry sinews in an era of flood and famine, stripping fields bare and igniting pitchfork revolts from Hunan to the Huai, where widows' laments birthed warlords like Dou Jianda whose hordes drowned imperial edicts in Yangtze gore. Military hubris sealed the fissure, the Goguryeo obsessions of 612 to 614, hurling 1 million untried conscripts across the Yalu in monsoonal quagmires that claimed 90% to arrow and ague, not only hemorrhaged the treasury, taxes tripled, granaries emptied, but demoralized legions whose survivors swelled Shui Ju's western banners. The Korean mirage a quixotic drain that left flanks exposed to Li Yuan's Taiyuan thunder. Personally, his paranoia post Zhao's 606 death, executing kin like Yang Jian in 615 on witchcraft phantoms, isolated him in Yangzhou's lotus haze, eunuch favorites like Yuan Huaji supplanting sage advisors like Gao Jiong, whose 607 beheading silenced remonstrance and invited the coup that claimed his throat. At root, Yang's Confucian reforms, the keju's merit sieve and land redistributions, upended the 9-rank aristocracy without compensatory bomb, breeding a bureaucratic hydra that bit its own tail amid the clan's fury, his frugality's facade crumbling into palaces' excess where 300 halls swallowed sesterces while peasants starved. In vaulting to unify China's veins, he mistook the dragon's flight for heaven's grace, his follies a cautionary scroll where ambition's ink drowned the realm in rebellion's flood.